Hello, everyone. Hi, and welcome to Convocation. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rachel Briggs. I'm a fourth-year student and a long-term member of the steering committee. As a past and possibly future moderator of the all-college meeting, I would like to welcome you to this, our first ACM of the year. This is our opportunity to welcome new members of the community, to recognize the accomplishments of returners, and to start us off, I would like to bring up our academic dean, Ken Hill. Thank you.
Welcome again, everyone. What I'd like to do is to introduce the community once again to people who are going to be instrumental in the new students' lives, instrumental in working with their thinking, learning with them, becoming friends, and hopefully being able to tell all the stories you wanted to know 4 years after you graduate. So if the faculty will please stand up and be acknowledged by the community. Thank you. We have several awards that we give out at the beginning of each year. It's my honor this year to give out the Richard Stanton Davis and Nora Deacon Davis Scholarship that was established in Dick Davis's honor. Dick was a founding faculty member in philosophy at COA, and my understanding, even though I didn't get to meet him, is that he was a wonderful mediator. He could get people to see eye to eye, he had a lot of energy, and he stood for all the values that COA holds very dear. Dick was taken from us much too young. He was only 41 when he died. And so we put together a scholarship to honor a student who would be representing the same types of qualities that Dick had. This year, that student is Gina Dallaire. You can clap now. Gina's not able to make it here today, but a few quick words on Gina. Gina is in the teacher certification program. She's studying to become a high school social studies teacher, and when she's not studying courses on education and history, she's taking courses pertaining to music, sociology, and social justice. So the next person to come up, I believe, is Chris Peterson.
Hello, I'm Chris Peterson. I teach marine biology, and not surprisingly, I'm presenting a couple of scholarships in marine conservation and biology. The first one's a tough one. It's the Rebecca Clark Memorial Scholarship, because a lot of us taught Rebecca. It was created in 1996, or it's a memory of Rebecca Clark, who graduated in 1996. She was studying sea turtles in Thailand in 2004 when she was killed in the tsunami. Sorry. I'm just passing on the Ken tradition of crying when we give this award. This year's recipient is a third-year student, Rachel Sullivan Lord. Rachel is not here. I think she just got off a bus in Montreal and is on her way here. Rachel kind of epitomizes Rachel. Rachel has been intensely involved in the field in a lot of different things. She spent the summer on Mount Desert Rock. She's been to a variety of marine mammal conferences. She's just been playing with whales up in Canada for the past 3 weeks. And so even though she's not here, let's give her a round of applause for this particular award. The second award I'm presenting was established by former COA trustee Robert Bloom in honor of his daughter Alice. It's the Alice Bloom Yoakum Scholarship, and it's awarded to an undergraduate who are actively involved in biodiversity and especially preservation of underwater species. I'm happy to see this student is back here. In the past, since December, this student has been in Belize in tropical marine ecology, at the Florida Natural history doing shark research and just came back from 6 months at James Cook University in Australia. So Casey, why don't you come up and give this award? This is for Casey Yanos. And continuing our series, it's now my pleasure to introduce Jamie McCowan, who's going to give the next couple of scholarships. Jamie.
Yep, I'm Jamie. I actually teach classes here in government and polity, and I have the pleasure of presenting 2 awards today. The first of these is the John Dreyer Scholarship. For those of you who are less familiar, John Dreyer was a former diplomat in the U.S. State Department and ambassador to the Organization of American States. He was a lifelong advocate for both education and environmental conservation, and as you could quite well imagine, it's no wonder that he was naturally drawn as a result of COA. Dreyer was an engaged champion of the college, including serving as chairman of the Board of Trustees. During this time, and in that particular role, he was a really strong supporter of our campus governance system, and also played a role in helping create the steering committee that oversees governance today. Every year, COA awards the John C. Dreyer Scholarship to a student who demonstrates leadership in building community spirit, both here on campus at COA, as well as within the broader surrounding communities in which we all inhabit. This year's Dreyer Scholar, Lisa Bierke, is a Lisa is a testament to the ways in which both of those elements can go hand in hand. Not only has Lisa taken a leadership role in building community on campus, she has also been one of the college's greatest assets when it comes to demonstrating the role an educational institution can play in serving the broader communities around them. Her work with the Solar MDI project is only one of the most recent in a long litany of community-based projects in which Lisa has taken a leadership role. I should also note that this past summer, Lisa was one of the few lucky ones, and I use that word very loosely, to join in on Darren's epic hike around the island. Someone like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. When asked as a first year why she came to COA, Lisa at the time said, quote, "Because everyone's voice is important and you can make a change if you choose to." Her own work, I believe, serves as a perfect testament to that ideal. Lisa? All right. I'm also very pleased to be presenting the inaugural, first ever Donald Strauss Scholarship. Don Strauss was a devoted and enthusiastic supporter of the college and personal friend to many of you in this room. He gave generously of his time, resources, and energy to COA, including serving, get this, as chair of the Academic Policy Committee for, I believe, 13 years. That alone would drive any mortal human to the point of insanity, I would imagine. However, Don was perfectly suited for the role. He was a lifelong scholar and proponent of constructive methods of conflict and dispute resolution, and he served for a period of time as president of the American Arbitration Association. You can imagine he would make for a perfect chairperson for a committee. The Strauss Scholarship was recently created to honor a COA student who has demonstrated Don's commitment to responsible governance, the democratic process, and conflict mediation. As someone who was part of the planning process that led to the creation of this scholarship, I want to personally testify to the fact that I cannot imagine simply any better person to serve as the first ever recipient than Graham Reeder. When Graham is not off at various sites across the globe affecting positive change in people's lives, or working on campus as a member of our student life and advising team, or serving as a role model for what it means to be a dedicated student both inside and outside the classroom, or playing a cataleptic shotgun-wielding hitman in his first major big screen debut, Graham is also volunteering his time and energy to make a positive contribution to our participatory governance system here at COA. And let me assure you folks, that's not easy, nor is it glamorous. When running well, it's frankly barely noticed by most of you. And when a dispute arises or there's a bump in the road, then, well, I'll just put it this way. Sometimes the, how should I say, compost gets heaped upon the greenhouse fan. And unfortunately, sometimes that compost ends up getting all over those who have volunteered their time and energies freely to help us all out and keep the system working. As someone who has served as both ACM moderator and chair for the Campus Committee for Sustainability, Graham has experienced these trials and tribulations firsthand. And I will say that the rest of us have had the great fortune to witness his maturity, level-headedness, thoughtful contemplation, and responsible decision-making during all of that. In these times, I believe we could all benefit from following his example. Graham? And now I'll invite John Cooper up to the stage.
I'm going to play my announcements. No. I have the pleasure today of announcing 2 scholarships in the arts, and I'll start with the one in music, which is appropriate. Margaret Johnson Scott was an opera singer, a journalist, and a passionate and influential supporter of music and performance and education, and we certainly need a whole bunch more of those people. This prize recognizes and encourages a commitment to music, capital M, by a COA student. This is the second year, actually, that it's been awarded. Last year, it kind of got preempted, but I just want to let you know who won it last year was the person who was playing the piano, Nanuel Hilliard. So you might well give him a hand for last year. This year's recipient came as a transfer. You've already heard her name announced. She's not here yet, but I know when she's back, she'll be busting her butt, practicing all the time. She came as a transfer. In my sabbatical term, she begged me to take a tutorial on guitar, and I was kind of reluctant, but last winter we did it. She excelled. She surpassed any expectations I could have of somebody that was kind of a new instrument for her. She just busted her butt. She took improv in the spring and excelled, and then became so passionate that I'm not so sure she's going to get an education degree and teach social studies. It might be something else. She might be on the street with her case in front looking for your dollars, playing her guitar. But no, she's a wonderful student. She's an excellent student in anything she does, and that's Gina Dallaire. Louisa Cabot Richardson Dreyer Award. We've been doing this for a number of years now, and it's always tough for us in the arts to find one person. Many times we wind up doing 2 people. This year we got it down to 1. A brilliant we'll talk about Louisa for a second. A brilliant artist. She set aside her art career to raise a wonderful family, and then resumed her art later on. And her beautiful still lifes and portraits express her humor, her spirit, and her joy of doing art. And of course, we certainly need that. And everybody, there's nothing need to be said about that. So we certainly salute her and her life. This scholarship is awarded annually to juniors who exhibit similar spirit of joy as Louisa did in the arts. So it could be any of the arts, including performing arts. And this year, Nancy Andrews and I taught a couple years ago, and we're teaching again this year, a course called Sound and, what was it, Nance? Sound and Film, yeah. I remembered the sound part. No, it's a great course. And we had a number of really fine students putting together some really great projects, film projects with great music too. And this one student, I know it affected Nancy, but it knocked me out. And from then on, I've been following him. He doesn't know it. I've been stalking him, actually. But because I'm going to do the music of his next big film, I hope. And he's the real deal. We say that in music when somebody can really play. And, they don't have to boast because you just pick up the horn and you play. In this case, his film, his eye, You can see his film, Earth in the Brackets, the COE students that went down to South Africa. He did a small documentary. You can check it out on YouTube, right, Devin? All right. You got to check this guy out because you are going to be seeing stuff by him when you're out there in the big world, because he's going to be doing it. So this award this year goes to Devin Altobello. Congratulations. I'd like to turn the podium on to one of our deans, Ken Klein.
It's always still weird being identified as a dean. Anyway, good afternoon. I have the privilege to present two scholarships this afternoon. The first is the Hartzog-Kaufman Scholarship, which honors John Kaufman, who was a former trustee of COA, who had retired to the island and then got involved in the college, actually a little bit before I got here, but he's somebody who I spent time with and worked with students for a number of years while he was here, sort of doing private tutorials and working with them on writing, on their, following their passions, and very much connected with the school. He now lives in Southern Maine, so he's not up here nearly as often. But when John worked for the National Park Service for a number of years, and in that role, he helped create the National Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, protecting rivers all over the country, a shared passion that we have. He also had what I think might have been the greatest job in the national parks for the last 100 years. He was given the task of wandering around Alaska, deciding which places should be national parks and which land should be just given back to the state. And John's work is just phenomenal. The scholarship is also named for George Hartzog, who was a hero of John's and actually his boss for a number of years at the Park Service. And Hartzog is a legend in his own right. He was actually fired by President Nixon for not letting a wealthy Republican donor have a private mooring in a national park, and did a lot to really bring the Park Service into the 20th century and to broaden out the mission of the Park Service. John wanted this scholarship to be named only for Director Hartzog, but we convinced him that his own legacy was really important, and so now it's the Kaufman-Hartzog Scholarship. It's awarded annually to students who have an interest in the management and protection of ecosystems. This year's award goes to Rachel Briggs. Make you stand up here for a second. So Rachel's enthusiasm for public lands has been shown throughout her 4 years at the college, both in terms of coursework that she's done, projects that she's doing, and also her internship and other summer work. This past summer, she was involved in a current research project looking at the lakes and ponds of MDI. You can talk to her about it and how difficult her research assignment was as she was out investigating the best swimming and picnicking places on this island and getting paid for it. So there is a future in public lands, and that kind of work is, part and parcel of what we celebrate with the Kaufman-Hartzog Scholarship. Congratulations. The second scholarship is the August Heckscher Award. And August Heckscher was an artist, author, and public servant whose life encompassed many of the values and principles underlying the study of human ecology. He served for 6 years as the Parks Commissioner of New York City, as a designer and printer of books, chief editorial writer for the New York Herald Tribune, and author of the biography of Woodrow Wilson. In many ways, August Heckscher was just the ultimate human ecologist. He also played a significant role in diverse organizations such as the United Nations and the National Endowment for the Arts. The Heckscher Scholarship is awarded to 2 students, one male and one female, whose work includes public lands, government, or the arts. This year's award goes to 2 people, Nathan Tonke and Trudy Zundel. Before I bring Trudy up here, we can applaud for both of them. So Nathan's not here, but let me say a little bit. So through his extensive work with intergovernmental negotiations and his leadership role with COA's internationally recognized youth organization, Earth in Brackets, which you just heard about, Nathan has helped to strengthen COA's program in international environmental diplomacy and has supported other students as they learn about the United Nations systems and ways to influence international policy and governance. And that contribution is a really important one. So for Nathan, similarly, Trudy combines a passion for local sustainability with the intergovernmental negotiations that could help foster that sustainability. Working with international NGOs and COA delegations to intergovernmental negotiations, Trudy has used her analytical and writing skills to influence international environmental negotiations and human rights policy. Last winter, I had the privilege of working with Trudy on a scholarship application, and probably more than anybody I've seen in the years of doing this work with international negotiations, she really articulated why those negotiations were important to her and important to her generation and an integral part of what she's doing in the study of human ecology. Pleased to present this award to Trudy. And now I'll call Isabel Mancinelli, faculty member in landscape art and design, to the podium.
Afternoon. The Eleanor Scott Mellencrot Prize is sponsored by a former very wonderful trustee of ours, Casey Mellencrot, who was very dedicated to the college and played a great role in establishing Beach Hill Farm. And it's in memory of her mother, who was a landscape architect, who was deeply committed to the preservation of the natural environment. So this award recognizes and encourages the commitment of a continuing COA student with interest in landscape architecture. And this year's award goes to Austin Bamford. Now, many of you might say, isn't he into economics and policy? And what about glass blowing and ceramics and urban design? Well, like a true human ecologist, Austin excels on all these areas. But he's shown extraordinary talent in landscape architecture, especially in a courtyard that he designed for the Jackson Laboratory, which was remarkably similar to what was actually designed and installed by professionals in that same space. He's currently developing a Watson proposal to study some of the best urban public open spaces in the world. And this Mellencrot Award hopefully will help him purchase books that will support his research. I'd like to invite Molly Anderson to present the next prize.
Hello. I am very pleased to announce the Partridge Scholarship. The Partridge Scholarships were set up by a very generous donor who has supported sustainable food systems at College of the Atlantic and also gave an endowment to the college that set up the chair that I hold, the Partridge Chair in Food and Sustainable Agriculture Systems. The Partridge Scholarships are given both to incoming students and to a senior who comes from a rural town in New England and has a strong interest in sustainable agriculture or food systems. This year, we are awarding the Partridge Scholarship to Alex Fouliard, who And I am really pleased to be able to make this announcement. I think it's a very appropriate honor for Alex. I had the pleasure of teaching her. I know that she has explored many facets of sustainable food systems in her time at COA. One of the most creative things that she did was to make a chicken museum. And you may have encountered the Chicken Museum in Deering. She grew up in Bradford, New Hampshire, a small town in the Sunapee Lakes region, and did her internship at Hatchnell Farm in Jonesboro, Maine, which raises organic blueberries and makes goat cheese. And I think she is a person who would fully meet the approval of the person who set up the Partridge Scholarships. Please come up. Now I'd like to invite another of our deans, Sean Todd, to the podium.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. The Maureen and Robert Rothschild Scholarship Award honors Robert Rothschild, who was a member of the Board of Trustees from 1985 till 1990, and Maureen, who joined the Board of Trustees in 1985 and was a life trustee until her death in 2004. Maureen was a strong advocate of the college's educational studies and teacher certification program. The Rothschilds endowed this scholarship fund to assist graduate students and those preparing for careers in education. This award is somewhat unusual in that, as a tuition scholarship, it can be awarded to incoming graduate students. On the basis of their considerable and rich artistic portfolio that they have already accrued, and I encourage you to go check it out, they're both available online, and their wish to convert their passion for art into medium for social and ecological justice, this year's award goes to incoming graduate students Sonia Hallett and Michael Joffe. Our final presenter for the awards is Dr. Nishi Rajakaruna, faculty member in botany.
Good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to present this year's Craig Green Memorial Scholarship in botany. Dr. Craig Green taught botany at College of the Atlantic from 1981 to 2003. I had the privilege of studying under him from 1990 to 1994. Craig was my teacher, academic advisor, and friend. I spent my first night in the United States at Craig's house and had my first botany lesson over blueberry pancakes the very next day. Craig had this amazing talent to make every interaction a teaching moment. It took Craig only a couple of days to instill in me a lasting passion for the plant world. I took all the classes Craig taught, did as many tutorials and independent studies with him as possible, and conducted my senior project under his careful guidance. If Craig didn't take me under his wing and guide me throughout my 4 years at COA, and for years after, I doubt I'd be standing here today. Craig received his undergraduate degree in forest botany from the State University of New York's College of Environmental Studies and Forestry, his master's in plant taxonomy from the University of Alberta in Canada, and his PhD in plant systematics from Harvard University. Craig was the world's authority on the grass genus Calamagrostis. Craig's taxonomic treatments of this genus have appeared in a number of books describing the North American flora. Craig involved students in his research and incorporated research into his teaching. Helping Craig on his studies on the genus Amelanchier, the spring-flowering shadbushes, I got an early glimpse into the exciting world of experimental botany. Craig loved Acadia National Park and was the principal investigator of many technical reports on the plants of the park, including studies done on rare and invasive species. The plant surveys he did with his students and colleagues over 2 decades laid the foundation for a highly celebrated review paper on the flora of Acadia National Park in the journal Rodora in 2005, and the recently published bestseller, Plants of Acadia National Park. Craig took a great interest on the campus landscape, and his efforts have contributed not only to making a gorgeous campus, but also an arboretum with a diverse collection of mostly North American plants. Craig is still one of the most talented and enthusiastic botanists I've encountered in my professional career. He was passionate about plants and their habitats, and his excitement for the plant world was nothing short of infectious. Even all these years later, a day doesn't go by without me appreciating how lucky I was to have Craig as my teacher and friend. It is my great pleasure to present this year's Craig Green Memorial Scholarship in Botany to Jillian Gall. Craig simply would have loved to see the passion and dedication with which you approach your coursework, the rigor with which you plan and carry out your field research, and the excitement you show for all things botanical. Jill has just returned from a National Science Foundation-funded internship at the Chicago Botanic Garden. Jill's ongoing senior project, it's been going on for 2 years now, is on insects of rock outcrop plant communities of D-Isles, and it has already been presented at regional, national, and international conferences. She is currently the lead author of 1 invited chapter in an upcoming book and 2 peer-reviewed papers about to be submitted. Bo and Bill Green, are you up there? Please join us in congratulating Jill. Jill, would you come up?
So I figured the other night we had a concert, it was a wonderful concert, sponsored by one of our wonderful board members, Mr. Hodder, Trio Cleonies, and I was very happy to see that our new theater person actually made it to campus and is in residence here now, Jody Baker. And you never know until they're actually physically here. And so I'm really, really, really happy for her to take on the challenge of the great tradition of Lucy Bell Sellers in the theater department here. And in talking with Jody, she mentioned her 2 children who just started school yesterday, and her oldest is named Ruby. And immediately, musicians, we know songs. So any girl's name other than Dorcas has a song to it. Okay, that kind of ruined the whole mood. But this is Ruby. Okay, so if you don't know this song, go to iTunes and look up Ray Charles and get that, because it's a beautiful song done wonderfully by Ray Charles, of course. Okay.
Thank you guys for playing. That was wonderful. One more hand for them. It's now my pleasure to introduce our alumni speaker for the afternoon, Piper Dumont. Piper focused on education here at COA and took this out into the world and is now the director at the Edible Churchyard in New York City, where she trains future community leaders to reimagine landscapes as edible educational gardens. Piper is here to share her knowledge on how we can take human ecology out into the world, and Ken Hill wanted me to be sure to mention that she would appreciate hugs after the ceremony. Piper, please come on up.
And Ken really wanted me to be sure to mention that he would love you to kind of not bathe for at least a week or two, and then be sure to give him a nice big hug, get some armpit in there, do whatever you can. He'd really love that. We had a good talk about hugs. All right, so hi. I have to say that it is so good to be here. No matter what kind of day you're having, I feel like as you drive on to the island, there's something that just shifts, and the beauty of it all just gets under your skin. And I think some of you have like been here for a while, and you're like, oh my gosh, I drive onto the island every day, but like seriously, don't take that for granted, because it's amazing. But anyway, welcome back, returning students. Welcome, new students. This is your new home. And welcome back, faculty and the staff, who are the heartbeat of this place, and they keep it going through all of the generations of students. So in case you didn't catch it, I'm Piper Dumont. I graduated from COA all the way back in like 2002, a really long time ago, and now I'm living on a really different island, a much more populous and less mountainous island called Manhattan. And there I'm the director of a program called the Edible Churchyard Project, which basically means that I grow things on roofs, and then I teach folks from all over the world and the country a little bit about the connections between food and justice and the ways that they can use food as a starting point for community transformation. It's a pretty sweet job, actually. But I was invited here today to talk about this place and how it changed me and how it's a part of the work that I do. Because I carry COA with me, and you do, and you will. You kind of can't help it. This place is profound like that. Just kind of sticks with you. Normally, when something attaches to a host, we call it a parasite. But I love my little buddy, my little COA creature, and that I carry around with me, and I have this creature with me all the time, and sometimes I stick it in my pockets, but most of the time I let it hang out on my shoulder because it's easier here then. But my little COA creature is this great comfort when you leave a place like this ecosystem that is COA. Especially if you're living in a place like New York City, where human influence often eclipses connectedness with ecological processes and awareness. But I should probably admit that back at my first COA convocation, back before I had my creature, I had no idea about the specialness that is COA. Shelley Pingree spoke at my convocation. Yeah, Shelley Pingree, you know, Maine congressperson Shelley Pingree, which is kind of amazing and makes me a little unsure of why I'm up here, because she's super badass and she wears way nicer suits than I do. But they invited me, and so I'm here. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, wow, it's been a few years since she spoke, like 14. And so I was like, maybe I could do a very COA thing, and I'll think back on Shelley's comments, and I'll reuse and recycle some of those pearls of wisdom and kind of give them back to you. And then I realized that I can't remember her talk, except that she mentioned that she had been a sheep farmer, which gets anyone's attention. And it's not that I can't remember because she wasn't interesting. She's really interesting. She's doing amazing stuff. I had trouble paying attention Because when I was sitting on that side of the big, huge, non-movable podium, I was just too anxious. I was fidgeting, I'm a fidgeter, and I had all of this stress because I had this sneaking suspicion that I probably shouldn't be here, that maybe it was a mistake. Maybe some of you are feeling something like that. No, you know, new folks, I don't know, returning folks, you shouldn't be feeling that. But for me, it actually had to do with where I come from. You see, I come from what some people not so lovingly call white trash. So statistically, I really wasn't supposed to be here. I should have dropped out or gotten pregnant or barely made it through high school like everyone else in my family. So when I was sitting there, I was like really excited to have made it, and yet I was crazy nervous. When would I be found out, right? Now, I mention this not like to sort of be like, oh, look, cool, right? But because maybe some of you have your own anxieties. And so you're not quite listening to me, which is a little relieving. But maybe you're wondering, is this the right school for me? Am I going to make friends like the ones I just left? Where the hell am I going to sit at dinner? Maine? Really? This is really far from pretty much everything. Crap, I forgot my roommate's name. So, what is Satan? And then there's the big one. So, what is human ecology? And while you figure out the answers to the other questions, that last one will continue to follow you every time someone asks you about your major in college, and you'll learn to love it. Now, while you're here, and especially when you go out and you share COA and human ecology with the world, you learn that this stuff, human ecology, is pretty radical. Radical in the theoretical sense, not like radical. You know, it's radical, okay? Because despite all of these anxieties that I had coming here, COA is a place that transforms the energy of those anxieties into proactive responses. We critique a system that marginalizes and excludes those who don't conform. We figure out how to respond in innovative and more just ways. For me, COA cultivated what I call an everyday practice of subversive mindfulness. Yeah, an everyday practice of subversive mindfulness, right? So by this I mean that while questioning the dominant paradigm, you know, the way things are done, sort of typically and taken for granted, at COA what we do is we seek to do things in a more compassionate, a more hopeful, and a more conscientious way. COA is not about being cynical. It's definitely not about giving up. It's about believing in something better, even if we've never seen it before. And I think most revolutionarily, this place is about believing that we can be part of creating that something better. So simply by virtue of being here, it's a safe bet that you're searching for something a little different. You're questioning the traditional confines of academic disciplines. You're thinking maybe there are better ways to build community than fraternities and sororities. Sorry, new folks, there aren't fraternities or sororities here. Bummer. You're hoping to delve into courses, concepts, complicated real-life problems, yourself, and the world in a process of active inquiry and critical deconstruction. And yes, we are really, really good at critique and deconstruction. But COA pushes us to do something more. The harder and frankly braver work that is creating alternatives. You know how it's really easy to like kick apart someone's sandcastle and it only takes a moment and it's a little satisfying and like feels really good in that moment and then you're kind of like, oh, whatever, moving on. But then when you sit down to make your own sandcastle, it's actually kind of hard and it doesn't always turn out like you'd intended and maybe even falls apart halfway through. But when it's done, it's even more satisfying than kicking someone else's sandcastle. Did that make sense? Okay, well, that's kind of how I think of being the innovative and proactive agents of change that COA is training us for. At COA, we practice harnessing and developing our skills, our experiences, and our passions to actually create something. We strive to cultivate more good and beauty in the world. So while there are lots of good universities and colleges, COA differently prepares us to innovate, to imagine, to build, and basically to light up the world. You know, with like low energy lights that are sustainable, not contributing to light pollution. And, you know, our inner lights, it's like Care Bear style, you know? All right. So as we leave here, there's that little COA creature, the one that I carry around on my shoulder, is this constant reminder of that everyday practice of subversive mindfulness that I first cultivated in this community. So while this is all interesting, what does that look like for me? Because that's why they brought me here, right? What am I doing with my life that illuminates this concept of subversive mindfulness? How am I putting human ecology in action? So I came out of COA as an educator committed to working for social justice because I believe that education can be one of the most profound and transformative forces for social change. So I've taught in a variety of educational settings, ranging from the Appalachian Trail to the Allagash Waterway, and from small sustainable farms to New York City public schools. I've spent time in these places as a wilderness troop leader, an environmental educator, a labor organizer, a pulp chemist, a classroom teacher. And yet, I was still searching for how to bring together my skills and passions in a way that responded to a global outlook while making change locally. And that's how I ended up in graduate school. Yeah, I got my master's in international educational development, which has a lot of its own problems. Don't worry, I was critiquing them the whole time. My focus was in peace education. I did this at Columbia University's Teachers College. And the reason I was there is because this program is actually the birthplace and the center of peace ed. And so against all odds, this country mouse who loves the mountains and is not so fond of concrete packed her suitcase, hopped a bus, and landed in New York City. And while I was in graduate school, it's all been very interesting in its own right. But the thing that I really began to understand is how special COA is. You see, when we get to more advanced material like radical pedagogies, again, radical theoretically, not totally tubular, pedagogies, which they are, by the way, everyone was blown away and frankly seemed to think that these were impossible to implement. And weirdly, I had read some of these texts in my first year ed courses at COA, and I had seen those principles in action. It is being done right here, all right? So I was like, yeah, what? I know what's up. And while I was getting my master's, I was actually invited to stay on for a doctorate. And given the insights that I've been having about COA and its awesomeness, I designed an interdisciplinary doctorate. And I call it human ecology. They don't call it that, but that's what I call it. They call it interdisciplinary. Anyway. And weirdly, they accepted my proposal. And so I'm focusing on food, particularly food knowledge, and education about food that happens in families and communities and in popular culture. And so while this is all very fascinating as I study agriculture and our food system and media and food sovereignty and international trade and so on, I found that being in academia, specifically in the ivory tower of Columbia, was getting incredibly disconnected from the world that I was reading and writing and talking about. This didn't make sense to me coming from COA, where we strive to practice what we teach and sometimes preach a little, but it's cool that we get a little preachy because we need a little bit more of that preaching. But my little COA creature that was hanging out was getting really insistent that I start connecting all of this theory to practice. And it was threatening that if that didn't happen, that it would start to slowly wither away and it would hibernate or go into extended torpor if you want to get nuanced about what it actually was going to do, because we know that not many folks do actual hibernation. Thank you, Steve Russell. So that's when I started my current job. Right across the street from Teachers College is Columbia Seminary, Union Theological. This is a place where radical theologies of social justice are being formed. So when I found out that they needed someone to link food justice with their work with future faith leaders, we co-developed this thing that is called the Edible Churchyard. And because I went here, I have a feeling that some of you might be asking, like, what? Ministers, faith leaders, churchyards. Well, what's that all about? And I'm like, yeah, I know. But here's something that's actually important to think about. Historically, faith communities are some of the largest landholders around, particularly in urban settings. They also tend to be at the forefront of emergency food programming. That's where your soup kitchens are happening. That's where your food pantries are happening. They're often the ones who are out on the ground dealing with the most disenfranchised and vulnerable in our communities, because they're brave to be doing that work. And anyway, so they have these, like, these big grounds, and they have these beautifully manicured lawns that are often poisoned as well. And then they have these food pantries, and so they're importing 5-pound blocks of cheese food product, right? Because that's how you feed the hungry. 5-pound blocks of cheese food product. That's food, right? And so we were thinking about it, and I was like, there has got to be a better way. A more sustainable, a more nourishing, and a more just way. So we decided that we would transform the campus in order to model another way. So we're turning part of the quad into an edible native New York plants garden. We're growing things like sarsaparilla to make root beer and other goodies, but blueberries, and we got bracken ferns, and then we're turning one of the dorm roofs into a garden for traditional produce. So we've got cucumbers, tomatoes, eggplant, okra. Seriously, you should come. We'll make, food. It's delicious. We just had, 150 people up there for dinner the other night. A no-waste meal, which is that subversive mindfulness I was trying to inculcate into them. But, and while all this growing is really exciting, and it's actually kind of the sexy thing, everyone wants to talk about the gardens, what I think is really cool is that we're educating hundreds of seminarians about food and justice. So I teach courses on food justice. We bring inspiring people like Vandana Shiva. Y'all know her, right? Yeah, what? Give it up for Vandana. To campus to share what she's up to and the amazing work that she's doing. I teach skill building workshops on things like composting and seed starting and canning and lactofermentation, and it's pretty rad. And this past year, I actually spearheaded the seminary's participation in the inaugural White House Interfaith Service Challenge. So we convened down at the White House to start brainstorming how to engage interfaith service in our communities. And then I went back to New York and partnered with the Jewish Theological Seminary, the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood, and St. Mary's Episcopal Church. So we're all in about a 10-block radius in Harlem, and we're all working on justice within the community. And so we got together to see if there was something tangible that we could do to address food justice in our neighborhood. So we had a bunch of events and dinners to engage with the issues. We had a food justice in the Sukkah event for the Jewish Harvest Festival, Sukkot. We did dinner dialogues, like one called From Breadbasket to Food Desert, which explored the transition of our neighborhood from an agricultural community that fed Lower Manhattan to a place rife with food insecurity. We did a lot of dialoguing, but we also wanted to ground all of this talking. And it just so happens that St. Mary's has a pretty big churchyard, so we made it edible. We cleared the space, and we built 26 raised beds that are now producing over 600 pounds of fresh produce that goes straight to their food pantry. Goodbye 5-pound blocks of cheese food product. Hello, greens and cucumbers. And we're also bioremediating their soil. In the city, all of the soil is toxic. You can't grow anything out of it. It's full of lead, mercury, cadmium. So we're working on getting it back to something that's a little bit more healthful. And since economic justice is so closely tied to this project, it also involved getting a grant to hire local unemployed neighbors as gardeners, providing at least a little bit of help in a place that is suffering, listen, with rates of unemployment over 50% for African American males of employment age. So for me, this is putting theory into practice. We worked within our community to identify an issue and collaborated to come up with an innovative response. And then we brought a little bit of subversive mindfulness to all those involved. It's a little human ecology in action. So this is how my little COA creature is bringing some human ecology to my neighborhood. So I encourage you, as you're kind of getting going, to do the hard and the brave work of building and creating alternatives. Some of these will be epic failures, and others will be shining successes. But that COA creature rallies our fortitude to continue to believe in our individual and collective potential for goodness and beauty and compassion. But for today, your only job is to arrive here. It's Convocation. So you bring with you all of the stories and experiences that have made you so far, and all of the curiosity and hopefulness that brought you to COA. This place, if you're open to it, will offer you a little idealistic creature that can accompany you for the rest of your life and will remind you of what is possible. So welcome to this strange, beautiful place. We are so grateful that you're here.
Piper, thank you so much. That was wonderful. The last person I'm going to bring up today is Darren Collins, who is a 1992 graduate of the school and has since circled back around to become our president. Darren.
Thank you, Piper. If you had bombed, it would have been really hard for me. But you were spectacular. And I love the little creature. It was a little weird at first, but I came to love it. Hey, this is my second convocation. And last time I took all of my clothes off to get into the water, but I'm just going to take my jacket off this time. Today, I'm going to talk about advice, reflection, news, and then some goals. But before I do that, I'd like to ask all of the staff if they might stand up. We've talked about... We talk a lot about faculty, and as we should, but what's unique about the college is this triumvirate between faculty, staff, and students. That's what makes this place special. But let me start with advice. My wife, Karen, was saying, you better make this short because people are running out of juice. But I've got 6 pages, and I was up like all night last night, so you got to hear me out. Just a few days ago, I sat on this stage in front of an audience of the first-year parents and grandparents and siblings and guardians and friends. It's what we call parent orientation for first years. And first years had just taken off and gone in front of turrets, getting ready for their OOPS trip. It wasn't difficult to read the emotions on parents' faces. There was, my daughters, there was sadness, there was some anxiety, there was fear, excitement, and wonder. But the first thing I said to them was, hey, I see all these emotions on your faces, but the most important thing I see, however shadowed it might be by fear or anxiety, is pride. Because you should be the proudest people in the world, and let that pride beam through. Your sons and daughters have sought out this place. They've laid everything on the line to get accepted and come here, and they've done something very different from most, if not all, of their peer groups. This is unique and special. The College of the Atlantic is the greatest educational experiment the world has ever seen. They have done a remarkably bold and ambitious thing coming here. You, not just first-year students, but all COA students, have done a remarkably bold and ambitious thing coming here. Thank you for coming. You're about to begin a hero's journey, where each path and each destination is unique and it's also self-determined. My first piece of advice to all of you, first-year students, the entire body, you should be extremely proud. But I ask you to temper this pride with a sense of privilege also. The people that are surrounding you, specifically those faculty and staff, but also trustees, past presidents, past faculty, alumni, the whole MDI community, financial supporters, all of them, you, the students, are their focus. They have given or are in the process of giving everything, every stitch of their body so that you can succeed. So be thankful for that. Be very, very thankful for it. These past few days, we've done our best in orientation to help you feel welcome, help you feel secure. The same community who wants you to succeed by your self-determined measures of success, they have your back. Don't worry, they've got your back. I hope you know by now that there's this tremendous community of support. But I want you to balance that feeling of security with this one. COA isn't high school. COA is not summer camp. Your adults will treat you as such and will expect you to act as such. These years, they should be really tough. Your intellect, your morals, your beliefs, they should all be challenged. And sometimes they'll even be like dragged through the mud. If it's not tough, if you don't feel drained, if you don't feel challenged, tired, uncomfortable, you're doing something wrong. There's more than enough help for you here. So ask for it when you need it. But also, I want you to do your fair share of growing up, sucking it up, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, developing thicker skin, shed your pride a little bit, and above all, you should be prepared to work your ass off. Get ready. An awful lot of this work is intellectual heavy lifting. It's strenuous and taxing mentally and physically. We want you to find yourself. I want to come up to the library and see you tearing your hair out, studying a group of numbers, fixated on some drawing in some mortal battle of understanding until your mind weeps pitifully, I don't get it, exhausted. And then through your hard work, you find understanding and maybe even truth. Think until your mind hurts, but don't just think. This college is founded on the idea that thought must be balanced with action, or better yet, that true understanding actually requires action. We learn with our minds, but we also learn with our hands and our bodies. We read novels, but we write novels. We see, but we also draw. We manipulate chemical symbols, but we also make butanol. We're a community of scholars, but we're a community of makers, and that's just as important. So after you push your body to learn, push it until it weeps, I want you to push it also walking and running, climbing, paddling, and hopefully, if the weather holds out, swimming. That's advice. 1/4 of the way there, I promise. Reflection. This is my second convocation. In August, I finished my first year as COA president after coming back as a student 20 years ago. It's been a crazy, crazy year. I've never worked so hard in my life, and I've never loved the work that I've done more. When I tell people about my job, many start off with the conversation, well, God, you have to raise a lot of money, right? That must suck. You must really hate that. And I reflect, and I've spent probably 60 to 70% of my first year raising money. But I love it, and I say, bring it on. And I don't love it because I like to hang out in wealthy people's homes, or because I'm infatuated with having more money just for the hell of it, or because I like the sell. I've never, ever during this first year felt like a used car salesman. Never. I love this place, and I love it authentically and intimately, and I love using that intimacy and authenticity to get people really fired up. That's what I want you to leave today with, fired up. There's a real sense of intensity here. And part of the problem with this intensity in a mission-driven organization where everybody is so passionate is we take ourselves way too seriously. How can we balance? That's why I like that little creature on my shoulder. There's not a lot of levity in a mission-driven organization where everybody cares so deeply about this place, but we need to lighten up a little bit, okay? That's my reflection. Third, lighten up a little bit. Yeah. There's news. I got to share some news. Part of this convocation should be news. We climbed mountains. I never got more press, and the college hasn't gotten more press because we've climbed those mountains, I swear to God. 28 mountains, 24 peaks. I was admittedly the last person to finish because I was the slowest and the oldest, but it was awesome. We had students spend an entire summer out on Mount Desert Rock or Great Duck Island. Coming off of a summer of research on Great Duck, 1,600 people were in attendance at this North American Ornithological Conference. There were only 11 undergraduate presentations. 3 were from COA. Students, not just me being busy climbing mountains, but students were busy. The summer program, when I was a student here, the college kind of felt dead over the summer. This summer, it was like a beehive. There were trombone players, sitar players, transcendental meditation specialists. It was a crazy beehive of activity. Summer was cooking. The faculty, they continue to do their own work out in the world so that they can be better teachers. We'll celebrate no fewer than 4 faculty books that are going to be published this year. They range from chaos to an unbelievably interesting look at the perils, Nancy, I'm sorry, this is what I'm going, the perils and frivolity of our genetic material. Unbelievable stuff being produced by our faculty. Not to mention paintings, new pieces of improv, new papers and journals. We've got to celebrate the tremendous work of our faculty. They've been really, really busy. The farms, unbelievable experience on the farms. Out at Beach Hill, I sat there one day this summer and I kicked back and I said, this is what success looks like. Unbelievable job by our people at Beach Hill. And speaking of farms, Peggy Rockefeller Farm is finally coming online. We're feeling really, really good movement. We've got now acreage in the landscape that's going to be dedicated to sheep, to chickens. We got fences up. Things are on the move. And plus, did you hear what happened at Peggy Rockefeller this summer? We tried to bury Moby Dick in Peggy Rockefeller Farm and I was almost lynched by our neighbors. We didn't wind up doing that, but the farms have been tremendously, tremendously busy and productive. The board, busy and productive. We have had a transition. Bill Folk, who has guided us for so long as a great, great board member, has stepped down, and we've taken on Will Thorndike as our new chairman of the board. Is Will here? Where is he? Will. I don't know where he is. There he is. Hey! We know Will is the right guy because he's doing the Bar Island swim with us today. Everybody's been busy. We've done great. We've made our alumni goals in terms of giving. We're in the middle of a $32 million capital campaign with just $3 million to go. I can tell you, I've been to so many cocktail parties, my liver has gone way out for this college. We are close. Just last week, we received a $1.25 million gift from a very generous human being named William Stewart. He gave us this gift in honor of his daughter, Lisa Stewart, and she died of cancer several years ago. In memory of that amazing woman, this money will now permanently endow a faculty position in women's studies and literature. And this just happened less than 10 days ago. We wanted to name that chair on Convocation, and so we had to put everything into overdrive, faculty, staff, board, working all night to get this done. And through the unanimous support of the faculty and the unanimous support of the Board of Trustees, we would like to name Karen Waldron. I didn't even get to finish my line. I just said the name. We would like to name Karen Waldron as the Lisa Stewart Chair of Literature and Women's Studies. Congratulations. Think of no better person for her. Last one. Last of the four. My wife's looking nervous over in the corner there. Sorry. Karen, do you know everybody? You should stand up. Stand up. This is... Couldn't do it without you, babe. Yeah. Goals. This is the last one, goals. I like to have a set of goals to work from. I stitch them up in my office and I list it out. I look at them every day. I breathe and I live and I bleed these goals. And they're I know I've got to raise a lot more money. Second, I know I've got to continue to recruit the best students in the world, the students that are going to really kick ass when they get here. I know I've got to get the word out. More people need to know about this amazing institution, not for a sense of pride or for ego, but we do things the right way. More people need to know about it. And then last, I want this place to be the best place not only to study, but to work. And that means more attention to faculty and staff salaries. It means being open and understanding each other and being respectful of the way we think about each other. It means allowing faculty, staff, and students to pursue their individual creativity with freedom and gusto. This place, the College of the Atlantic, begins and ends with people, not with money, not with buildings. It begins with people. And so my goal is to foster that sense. And you all are a very, very part of that, a very huge part of that. Now, my goals go on, and I want to learn every student's first name. I want to run the MDI marathon in 3 hours and 45 minutes. I'm working on learning French. I want to spend more quality time with Karen. I want to read Swallows and Amazons and The Hobbit to my two daughters, and I want to spend more time with them. I need to call my mom more often. I wanted to start a formal COA sailing program. I want to kayak around MDI again. I want to start our beginning documentary on the College of the Atlantic. It goes on and on and on and on. But I got to focus, so I'm asking you all to help me focus. So listen, before we head off, there is one thing I'd like to conclude on. We're about to do a swim, right? Right? We're about to do a swim. I had a very interesting debate this morning with a faculty member who I respect dearly and will name anonymous, and we had this heated back and forth debate about the swim and whether it was the right thing to do or not. So before you head off, I want to say a few words about the sea. It is awesome, and not in the way of like awesome radical dude. The sea is awesome, and it doesn't care if you drown in it. Right? And I don't say that flippantly. I say that because what we do, if you decide to swim, needs to be done with respect. You need to know your limits. You need to know whether you can do it or not. You need to know whether you're in trouble and to reach out for help if you need it, because we're all there for you. But you need to do it with respect. This isn't a macho thing. Last night, I prepared this unbelievably cool video with great music, and it was going to flash up, and it was about, like, listening to Led Zeppelin before going on your first, the opening day of football. And I had you guys all set up, and then I got into this discussion with this faculty member. So I'm not going to show you that video, because I want you to do this with the respect and with knowledge that the sea deserves. So, hey, that was long. I'm sorry, it was a little bit more focused maybe than last year, a little bit less rambunctious, but I love you guys. I love this school, and I want this to be the best year possible. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. All right, Sarah, what's next? I need to officially, with this banging of the gavel, officially open the academic year of 2012-2013.